I love to say that at CSW, the learning happens at the intersection of all the fields of study. Because actually, that's where we live. We live at the intersection of things. We don't live in silos. So learning shouldn't happen in silos either. So we learn at the intersection of things and through multiple modalities. So I will give in a minute an example of something I just saw around that. But I will also say that another key piece of being in a progressive education setting is who we learn from. And at CSW, we certainly learn from our teachers and in the classroom, but you need to also understand that you have 309 other people that you learn from. We have a vibrant community with very, very curious students who are also making meaning of everything that they are learning. And one of the ways that we learn from each other is through our demonstrations of learning. It's a really important part of what we do. So at the end of every mod, students share what they learned. For example, I just came from walking through our last end of mod show, and the analytic geometry presented some of their work on quadratic equations. And so a typical classroom, analytic geometry would, ask you to illustrate through quadratic equations X. But what we do here is the student picks their own challenge. So the one that comes to mind right now is the student that picked to use quadratic equations in drawing a butterfly. And there was a reflective piece of why the student picked that right next to it. And the insight that I got and what I learned about the student in picking that shape to apply and to use these formulas for gave me insight into the student and inspired me actually in something that a project that I have that I'm going to think about a little bit differently after reading that. And even in the color chosen to represent this butterfly, the student was able to put a bit of themselves. So why do I bring this example? This could be, a classic example in any math class, but in this setting, because the student had choice and agency, they went way beyond the assignment. And it became a part of them, and then they shared it out. So these are things that excite me as the head of school as I go around and witness the learning and the process. And we value so many ways of demonstrating knowledge. So the rigorous program has options for our students in how they demonstrate this mastery.
And we're here to talk a little bit more about our academic program, my favorite thing to talk about. So I guess I would start by saying that our progressive pedagogy is really baked into our structure. As we know, how you spend your time is what you value, and the way that we structure time at CSW is really unique. And actually aligns with our pedagogy. So we run on a modular system. We have 6 modules a year. Our students take 3 classes at a time and change every 6 weeks. And classes are 90 minutes long. So they're 90 minutes long every day for 6 weeks. And then we have different ways that we build structures moving out. For example, we have foundational courses. Some of these are multi-mod courses, for example, in language and in math, where you're taking the course for many mods in a row. And then we have many electives and different choices as you go through the school. So that's just a little bit about our structure when you're thinking about our academic program. We are a school that's really, as part of our progressive pedagogy, we really push students in, I think, a different kind of way. I've been a part of many different educational institutions in my life, and one of the things I value most about the Cambridge School of Weston and teaching and being there every day is the way that we really see students and challenge them individually and as a whole, as Rachel already talked about a little bit. So to think about that more and to think about that and how it's rooted in In our school, Rachel mentioned John Dewey, kind of the founder of progressive education. And we really adopted as a school the progressive pedagogy in 1937 with our head of school, John French. And so he has a lot of progressive education tenets that are kind of pieces of what we live by and how we do our school. The module system was put into place in 1972, and it's something that, we know based on research that is the best way for adolescents to learn when you're doing deep focused learning. For an extended period of time, it really allows for that depth and that breadth and that active learning, that unique challenge that is working on something for a significant period of time and really going deep with it. And everything that we do is really grounded in our values in that way. So I thought I would throw a few kind of quotes at you from John French and talk a little bit about how that manifests today here in 2022. So the first one that I think resonates is the best guarantee of intellectual achievement is interest, which conveys its own reward. I think this is how I like to think also about the way that we engage our students. So we know that when a student is interested in something, when you, our future students who are on the call tonight, are interested in something, it really drives you and it really gets you excited. And that's why there's so much choice in our program. There are core foundational elements, and then there are pathways with choice so that you can go deeper into what you love, and you can also try new things that maybe you didn't know that you loved. There's choice within the module, right? So Lise was talking about this amazing, the projects for analytic geometry. Our end of mod show, every mod is just a celebration of demonstration of knowledge, of what students have learned, of what they're putting on. It's, our arts program, our visual art, our performing arts program, and it's every academic department that's a part of it. So it's a wonderful celebration and really ties back to students' interest and their passion, and it's rewarding to share with the community and enriches everybody. Another quote, I'll give you another quote. The only enduring discipline is self-discipline. We are a school that really sees and knows and values our students, and I say that not flippantly at all, because we are student-centered in the way that we see each student and then we push them from where they are. For example, there are pathways through departments. So if you are, a ninth grade student and you're taking our BioConnections class, and then you're really interested in biology, and then you want to take more of a biology pathway, you can still engage with other kinds of science, but you can do our immersive marine biology off-campus module where you spend time on Hurricane Island. You can do animal behavior. You can do the biology of cancer, which Rachel mentioned too. There are just so many choices when something piques your interest and you want to go deeper with something. I can also give kind of another example about how our structure promotes challenge. And it also can cultivate passion. So the way that our schedule is built, a student, for example, who loves math and is interested in math can really accelerate through our program so that they can do, the geometry and the algebra too, which is in and of itself a little bit different than what it looks like in a more traditional structure, in the way that, we weave social justice into the work that we're doing. It's project-based, but then they can also go through, our pre-calculus sequence, which Lise was mentioning, the analytic geometry, elementary functions, trigonometry, onto our calculus sections, and then beyond, because by the time they get to 12th grade, they can take our math modeling, which is a data class. They can take linear algebra and multivariable calculus. And then they can also be involved in our robotics program or our computer science program, so that there's ways to kind of also self-challenge, not just within a classroom, but within the way that you move through the academic program at the school. Every student in every grade will take at least 2 to 3 blocks of study in each of the 5 core academic disciplines. So math, science, English, history, language. We offer French, Spanish, and Mandarin, all with abroad opportunities, modules abroad. And then we'll also engage in our arts program with at least 2 blocks. So across the visual art, dance, theater, and music departments. And then there are also kind of free choice blocks so that you can engage in robotics or in extra art um, or in different electives. There's also what I call kind of like choice behind a door. So a sophomore, for example, a 10th grader will take the required writing course, writing about reading one, and then we'll also be required to take 2 electives. But we have 7 different electives that we offer. So that's going back to that intrinsic interest that I was talking about that driving so much of our curriculum, that students are reading things that they're excited about. But the English department has really scaffolded what are the core skills and competencies that a 10th grader is learning in the English curriculum in 10th grade, and then differentiating it with content. So you can go on our website and see our almost 300 different offerings, some multi-mod and some single mod classes, but that's an example of what choice might look like within a module. Can you talk a little bit about how we structure a 90-minute class?
Yes.
Especially, talking about, this amazing course and some of the projects that come out of our classes.
So I think, one of the things we actually do really intentionally as a faculty is we talk a lot about what a 90-minute class means and what it looks like. Because 90 minutes is a big chunk of time. And we want to use it for maximum depth and not for like steamroll. So one of the beautiful things about 90 minutes is it works really nicely as 3 30-minute chunks. And I would say if you came into a 9th grade class, almost all of our 9th grade classes are happening really as 3 30-minute pieces. And so that means you can do things like have 30 minutes of prep for a debate, and then 30 minutes of debate, and then everybody takes a breather. They do a rubric and a little self-evaluation, and then you come back together and do 25 minutes of debrief. So that what the 90-minute class means is that you get a full arc of thinking, as opposed to sort of trying to stretch it out in bits and pieces and losing it over the course of several days. It means that we do things like a little bit of theory, and then a lab that goes with that theory, and then space to start working on sort of the write-up of that lab, where kids can do that in a cooperative and integrated manner with each other. So 90 minutes really means, again, like I said, that we get that full arc, but it has to be broken up. And so again, it's another place also where we can be really intentional about what's the goal and be able to have kids move in different ways, because there's enough time for people to go in a few different directions and then bring it all back together again. There's enough time to make a couple of mistakes and do that iterative work that Diana was talking about, and then bring it back together. So we get full cycles of revision, we get full cycles of idea development. I'm Rachel Hirsch, and I am the Dean of Faculty at CSW. I'm also a history teacher at CSW, and I'm really excited to welcome you here tonight and to talk to you about progressive ed, because aside from talking about Alexander the Great, it's probably my favorite thing to talk about. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what progressive ed looks like in our classrooms. And I would pick up on the thread that Lee's put out there just a moment ago in that story about the student who did the picture of the butterfly. And what I would say is progressive ed has a long tradition, obviously in John Dewey, and in these ideas that school is not preparation for life, but that the life we live in school, students' lives are real lives. And so school is real life. I think what that looks like for us in 2022 is, first and foremost, that rather than building a class and asking our students to reflect the class, we actually look first at the people in the class, and that what we do in a classroom works from the people outwards. And the reason that that's so important is because it means that everyone's experience and perspective has a relevance in that structure, and that our classrooms are inclusive places that respect and value not a mirroring of a canon or a particular idea, but instead the skills and abilities to both share what you're thinking and to listen and take in new material and bring that in and make that part of you and make you part of the material. So I think first and foremost, that's really what progressive ed means for us. We start with the student and we build from there. And so it means that in a given class, if you have 17 kids in a class or 15 kids in a class, in some ways you have a shared class that everybody's doing together, but you also have 15 different classes happening simultaneously, and then powerful intersections between each of those 15, and relationships are built as a whole group, as individuals, and in clusters. Our work is collaborative, our work is creative, and what we're doing as teachers is we have really high standards. And then our work is to then scaffold so that all of those folks coming in, bringing their own pieces, can enter that scaffold and climb together to something really big and new. It means that we're able to tackle very, very challenging, exciting material because everyone enters in their own place and they're allowed to take different things from it. So it means we can offer a whole class on bioethics. It means we can have a class that's all about the biology of cancer. Today, in a class that I was teaching, co-teaching with a science department member, we were looking at Hegel and Kant. And we were also looking at Hegel and Kant through the lens of American author Clint Smith. And so we were able to tackle these super, challenging, brain stretching, what is truth? What is reality? And then ground that also in a complicated history of those ideas tying into colonialism. And then additionally bring that back on a personal level to what each of us thinks individually. So it's that interplay, and that's how student-centered works for us, I think, in our classroom, is that we start there and we're building these concentric circles out. One of the most exciting things about our school is the idea that learning is ongoing, that we are a place that values learning more than knowing. And that, again, is one of our progressive principles, that we're about discovery, and that when you come into a classroom, we come in with questions, and when you leave with bigger, better questions. And then you take that on to the next place that you go. So I think that's what progressive ed really looks like in our classrooms. It's vibrant, it's dynamic, it has a lot of different avenues, it has surprises and discovery, but it also has a clear vision for the kind of work and the habits of mind that we want our students developing. Where they take it, that varies from kid to kid, but the sort of the passion and intensity that we're scaffolding in.
What I associate that with is you can't be passive. You can't just be a recipient. So your brain is activated, and that when we talk about curiosity, it's the questions and not getting a pass on not answering it. Continuing the probe, the teacher as a guide, your peers as a guide. So, in a ninth grade Spanish 2, French 2, Mandarin 2 class, the teacher certainly has goals. You have to know stuff, right? You have to know the tenses. You have to know when to use them. You have to know vocabulary. We expect, conversation. But as Diana said, it's the vehicle, the way in. So your choice of a project is your way in to demonstrate what needs to be learned. So freshmen just came from a course that is pretty foundational at our school, FJP, Food Justice Power. And what's brilliant about this course is that as a school, we've reflected that in this one course, well done, the elements that students are going to study in their entire scope of 4 years and that they're going to deal with in their lifetime are seeded right there. And it is modeled for them the type of thinking that we want you to go beyond. So students come from 25 different eighth grades, possibly. And how do we get students to understand what this is about? So the elements are that everybody knows about food. So you start with something that every student can enter and have some mastery around their own experience in that. So there's no exclusion. That's fundamental to progressive education. You have to belong. You need to be missed the day you don't come to class in a very well-run progressive education class. And so we talk about food, but my word, some of you all out here have careers about food. So it's a huge topic. It's a deep topic. It's not a light topic, but bringing in the elements of power and justice, which can be urbanization, if that's what, how is the city planned? Where are the food deserts? Where does food come from? So, that's one example that all freshmen take. And so we learn to listen, we learn to talk, we learn to research at the level that we expect. And then one of the things that we need to realize, that I need to realize with my gray hair, is that we are moving towards a very, very visual society and a way of representing knowledge, representing data. And so a lot of our classes have components of that. And that's that real life piece, right? And how you communicate it. So that class in 6 weeks will analyze the element and the connections and the intersections of food, justice, power. There will be oral presentations, there will be visual presentations, there will be writing, there will be feedback loops, iterations, but especially a ton of dinner time conversations, because it doesn't end there. Something you heard is going to provoke another question, and you end the class with definitely you learned something. But the bigger part is, what are you going to do with what you learn?
So we have another question. How do core requirements or areas of study fit into the progressive model? Like a puzzle, and they're all there. They're all represented. Like I said, a typical ninth grader will have the biochemistry and bioconnections, geometry or algebra 2 course, a language, French, Spanish, or Mandarin. They'll have the writing foundations workshop, which is our 2-mod core writing course in ninth grade, plus an elective. They'll have food justice and power, plus another history elective. And then they'll have a bunch of different arts and a bunch of different other things that they can choose from, different electives from different departments as well. They can take more history electives. They can be in the robotics program, the computer science, all of those places. So, and the arts, our students we don't have just artists. I mean, actually, Rachel and I were just talking about this yesterday. Which is one of the things that just brings so many layers to our students and to the flavor in the classroom, is that we don't have, students who are one archetype. We have, a drummer who is also on the basketball team, right? We have a soccer player who is putting out that analytic geometry project, and also, a dancer, right? You don't have to be one thing at CSW.
Yeah.
Our kids really develop themselves in different kinds of ways, and department chairs and academic departments love and value how their students develop skills in other departments and bring them back to them, which I think is really amazing. It also, kind of relates to how we do our interdisciplinary work. So Rachel is teaching a class right now, which is an integrated studies class, so that there are 2 teachers in the classroom from 2 different departments about the art of prediction. And then so we have many courses like that we offer. And then we also have kind of Modly experiences that students can engage in. So we have, this past module, we had the literature of the Anthropocene class and the principles of ecology running at the same time. And those students spent the morning at Walden Pond, reading Thoreau and discovering the flora and fauna at the same time. So it's just, I think the way it all comes together is that all the elements are there. We are a rigorous college prep, independent secondary school with, a way that we do things that, is our progressive pedagogy. So it is the how, it is the vehicle. can you tell us a little bit more about what challenging academics looks like in a progressive school? Rachel, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think that one of the things that's most fun about teaching in a progressive school, and particularly one that does put kids really in the center, is that we can make sure that everyone gets challenged. Because again, because we don't have sort of something that has to be the same for every kid, we can really meet kids where they are and stretch and bend. One of the things I think it looks like in the classroom is we have teachers who are really, we start by thinking about what's the learning goals, like what's the kind of stretch that we want kids in a class to do. And then we layer in content and activities and processes in order to move kids towards those goals. But what that also means is that if you have one kid or a bunch of kids who are moving really fast, you can, because you know what the learning goals are and because you sort of built the class around these goals, you can stretch and bend the material for those kids, while you have other kids who maybe want to explore it from a different way or need to explore it from a different way. And then we can bend and stretch in that way as well. And things can be moving sort of a little differently. I think that, I think our kids, they want classes that are alive. And so that's what the mod does, right? It's 6 weeks of like vibrant, intense, dynamic awesomeness.
So just to start, I want to make sure that you all know that the Cambridge School of Weston is a day and boarding school of about 310 highly engaged students, 12 miles outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So 20 minutes from downtown Boston. That should help you position where we are. And I would say that now more than ever, I think progressive education is relevant to our students, to our young people. Our students want to be in a vibrant environment to learn, and they want to be engaged, and they want relevant material. That's how they want to enter their learning. Why? Because they do want to be vibrant contributors to society. And I will also add that our students will probably live longer lives than we, and it is key and essential that they remain lifelong learners to have a meaningful life, both in the workplace and in their personal lives. So the way we teach, the how, puts students at the center of everything we do and of their own learning, and that is key to progressive education. We want them to be confident, even though the world will change around them, and they change.
I think our students are so textured and layered and dynamic and interesting and interested, and that's what they see. They don't walk into the process after being at CSW just with a number floating over their head. Is how I like to see it. But I also like to encourage our students to be present in their present. So in thinking about CSW and about your high school experience, thinking about how that's going to set you up is very important. But how you engage while you're here is what is really going to drive that. What type of students thrive at CSW?
That's a great question.
Yeah, you all are already asking the really great questions. So.
Yeah. This is what I would say. It's really, there's a culture at CSW where you're interested in becoming who you want to be, but you also have an interest in giving space for other people. And you love being in that kind of environment. So that's what I would say, is if you are interested and curious about other people and embrace, all of that, and you're interested in really, working on you as well, becoming, exploring all these different, I know that in high school, I wore different hats of who me was, and, was working on figuring that out. we embrace that, right? We embrace that curiosity about yourself and that curiosity about others. So I would say maybe that might be what I'll land with, Diana.
Thank you. Rachel?
So I think I would echo what Lisa's
Mhm.
shared and say I think the kids who thrive at CSW are kids who really value kindness and can find a place for that in a lot of different spaces. And that comes in that curiosity about others and curiosity about the world. And I think are they value it both in how they interact with others and in how they are treated, that they are attuned to that. And I think it's different from niceness, right? This is about fundamentally building communities of respect and curiosity. And
Mhm.
that I think that's what kindness looks like on our campus. And so I think what's cool about that is it means that you don't have to be a chatty kid, you don't have to be an arty kid, you don't have to be a sporty kid. You are probably some of each of those. And in your kindness, both to yourself and to others, you're exploring and seeking out all of those pieces in yourself and in others, and being a full and complicated self.
I agree with that as well. Um, and I will say, like Lise and Rachel have said, all different kinds of students and adults thrive at CSW. And it is that intellectual curiosity, it's that drive to know more about who you are and what your relationship is to your small community, your bigger community, and to the world. We're educating young humans to go out and be the humans of the future of our world. And we take it very seriously and very intentionally with everything that we do.
I will say that the teachers who work at CSW, we love what we do, and we're a really diverse and complex group of folks. But what we share is a deep love of kids and an incredible love of learning and teaching. And we talk about teaching a lot as an adult community. And that extends even beyond people who are classroom teachers. Really, everyone who works at our school is an educator, and we're thinking about progressive ed in all of our spaces, in our classrooms, in assembly.
We hire our teachers around also mastery and passion of subject matter. And so we pride ourselves at students being able, and the reason that we have only 3 classes at a time is so that you can go deep intellectually into these various subject matters, whatever that might be.
Also say that we're a school that's really focused on, educating each student wholly. And I'll talk a little bit about our PACE program, promoting awareness and community engagement. And the promoting awareness piece of the program is really a social emotional curriculum that's grounded in health and identity and cultural competency. And it's part of the way that um, that we really see each student wholly. Um, we know that every human really gets out of everything in life what they put in. And I think that that's a special and unique part of our program that, our faculty who are lifelong learners themselves push our kids in a way to say, well, like, what else could that be? Um, you know, Asking questions that they don't know the answers to. Because there's not one right answer always, right? It's about, and that's what I think Rachel talked about too, is kind of moving the class in that way. And then I will give you my favorite French quote, which is that the school exists for the child, not the child for the school. And that is something that just permeates every piece of our program and especially our academic program, because our school really supports iteration. We're not a community that kind of says, oh, that's how we've always done it, so we're going to leave it like that. And that is what brings us all together. Um, we have so many opportunities for leadership. Our students have a very strong voice in the school and are really change agents. And that's part of our mission, that we are building students who know what their contribution is to the school, to their community, and to the world. So we have voting student members on our board of trustees. We have 14 affinity and alliance groups this year, which are representative of the students that we have on campus that are also leadership positions. I work very closely with the curriculum committee, who is examining our policy and practice and our academic program and our curriculum, and reflecting back as students their experience and learning how to be a part of, enriching our community in that way. And they propose things and make changes, and it's absolutely amazing. And then part of really being a part of the community and the academic program is that we are very intentional about building community. And as I mentioned, it's community in the classroom, it's our larger community, and it's our contribution to the world. And I think that it starts with the individual, which is why we are focused on the student in our academic program. And we really are. When you come to CSW, here in the academic office, we are really thinking critically about how to have balance in your schedule, how to have all the courses that are foundational that you will need across the 5 core academic disciplines, how to make sure that we're sprinkling in some flavor of different things that you don't know that you are interested in, and things that you can discover. So I'm very excited, obviously, to talk about this, and I'm thrilled also to welcome my colleagues back to our fireside chat with an opportunity to hear from you all, because that is what we really want to do around here anyway. So I will play DJ, and we can move to some of the questions that have come through.
We are talking a lot about equity and power in those spaces. We're also talking about challenges and how we wrestle with them, and talking about goals that we're setting for ourselves, and helping each other think about how we work towards those goals, how we surmount some of those difficulties, just as Lise was saying, like that it's not only a celebration of everything that went right, but it's a space where we actually celebrate what we've learned from the things that have been harder, and sort of provide that insight to each other. So advisory is a really neat place. We meet twice a week. Mondays tend to be a little bit more like hangout and some quick business. Wednesdays often they follow after our all school assembly. So it may be that there was like a presentation, around a specific theme or issue, or a cultural heritage month. And then there's a place to go with that. You get to bring that to advisory and further debrief it, explore it further. We do our community reading. Each advisory group picked their own book and then worked on that over the summer. And then we're working with that at different times during the year, all different kinds of work around those texts. And again, it's a space where we're thinking about how we help kids develop the skills of agency and inquiry in a really thoughtful manner with a thoughtful curriculum, but it is different from a classroom setting. And that's that idea of learning on all levels and sort of community on all levels in all spaces.
Yeah. And I will also say, the advisor is also kind of the main point person for parents and guardians, so that we're one of the adult on campus who is holding your child and is watching that academic growth and the social emotional and kind of all of the pieces. And it's a wonderful relationship. And we also have the opportunity to meet with parents and guardians, and we do some of them with just the adults, and we do some of them with our students at the center, where they lead the meeting with their advisor and their parents and guardians right in the space. So it's one of my favorite parts. I love being an advisor. Also, my students are now in 12th grade, and so kind of watching how they've grown, you have that piece of love and pride in watching the students that they've become. I think the other thing that I will just say about that relates back to the core foundational courses piece is that we are incredibly intentional about our curriculum in terms of how we build it so that students do have longer relationships with their teachers. So they have a geometry course that's 3 mods, or a language course that's 3 mods, or the writing class in 9th grade is 2 mods. So that while they change every 6 weeks, they actually, like in 9th and 10th grade, they actually don't change the adults that they're working with. They're usually changing like 2 adults at a time, but then it's always the advisor who has that through line relationship with your student throughout the whole time. So this is a question about, student self-advocacy and intention. What are some of the biggest benefits of a progressive approach at the high school level, and how well does it prepare students for college?
Ooh, it's a good one.
So well is the answer.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll start with the college piece on the back end. Our kids are amazing kids, and so they read really well. And I think that part of, because they are, but part of it is that, sure, we don't have some of the traditional structures, right? Like we don't have an advanced placement program, an AP program. But really, that program wasn't designed for college admissions. It was designed to earn credit while you're in college. We do so much of that learning in different kinds of ways. And so when students are going to college, they're prepared. They know how to write. They know how to think. They know how to analyze data. They know how to, look at systems of power and justice and everything that they're doing. And then they know how to self-advocate when they're not sure how to do something. So, I think that goes back to that rigor piece, where the rigor is also really in the teacher seeing the student and pushing them themselves without kind of subscribing to an idea of what excellence looks like. Our kids really kind of surpass that, I think, on the college piece.
yeah. I mean, we just had a really interesting visit at school from an alum who is Dr. Susan Rivera, who is the president of McAllister. And she was saying that she spends a lot of time with another one of our alums who's an undergrad. And that, and we hear that from schools, that our kids are highly visible when they, both while they're at CSW and when they get beyond, because they are, one of the things we do with a mod system is we build working relationships. And so you'll get to work with, like, I'll work with a student in October of 10th grade, and then I'll work with them again in February of 11th grade, and then again in April of 12th grade. And the relationship that we have is a meaningful one, but it is a working relationship. We've worked together in a lot of different scenarios, and those are kids who will come back and check in and say hello. And so our kids are really good at talking with people at schools and talking about what they need, and being self-aware about their learning, and being self-aware of what makes them excited, and then going for it and asking for it, and making, and even more than asking for it, making it happen. And so what we know is that then when they leave CSW and they go on to college, they make stuff happen. And they engage with professors, and they engage with their peers, and they see themselves as active agents in their learning. They're not sort of waiting for it to come and hit them. They go after it themselves. And so they're like just the coolest people to keep in touch with. We have the coolest kids who become such amazing alums. It's really an incredible network of people.
And Rachel, I wanted to add to, it's, we love when they stop by, and I mean, we have intentional moments, but the nicest ones, sometimes they're candid. And the other thing that I find fascinating is, inevitably, we all face difficult moments and even failure. And those are kind of the stories that I have to say I like to hear about, because I like to hear how they surmount them or work through them. And, we have some habits that you develop at CSW, like we have actually named office hours. And an advisor will tell a student, well, did you go to office hours? No. Well, what choices are you going to make to get to office hours? Because that's where your answer is. But what I love about like these examples of quote unquote at failure, it's failure at this moment, at this thing, but how they pick themselves back up and continue towards a goal that they're, working on is important. And when I was giving that example of the analytic geometry project, next to it was an independent study that a student had done for 6 weeks. And I read through their report, but at the end, what it was like, what I did not accomplish and why. And that's just that as important, that's self-awareness. And I professionally still do that, right? So it is a lifelong skill. So, I think that's, it's multi-level, right? Because you have to be, mentally and physically well and have tools in your toolbox to pick yourself back up. And that goes back to Diana's, PA and CE question, our PACE program. That's what also happens in that space. I also was going to just touch on when Diana mentioned about APs. I think that for many of the parents of our students went to school with AP programs, and there are all sorts of reasons that the APs were developed. They're not awful, but one of the things that they did was that you had a group of people that thought deeply about a curriculum and shared it and put some standards in. So it was a very economical way of sharing a program that had a certain level of rigor and that could be evaluated by people outside of your institution. The thing about independent schools is you have a choice of how you build your curriculum. So what we do is we don't need to depend on the AP to build strong, vibrant, interesting classes. So I am not somebody who's going to go bash them. We don't need that. So for example, if somebody takes an AP English Lit in a high school, that teacher has maybe 50 texts to choose from, and they're going to pick 5 or 6. Those have been screened kind of for them. They're prototypes of assignments. So it's not, we don't have the necessity for it. And what it's really served students for is advancing in credits in colleges, and less, are accepting them actually. So I would just say that we find no harm, and no school is judged for a course that isn't offered at their school. So I have been at many schools that don't offer APs, and that's not what you're judged against, right? Your profiles match to the profile of opportunity. It's really about what opportunities that you took at your school and how you challenge yourself. It's your trajectory. And with less and less colleges using test scores, what makes our students so interesting is, is that they read well, like they have stories to tell, and they can talk about it. They can talk about their passion because they've been encouraged to talk about themselves and to know themselves. So we know and value them, but our students need to know themselves and know what they want and talk about it as well.